Okay, we're into an episode of On the Wrist from Off the Cuff to have a really cool review for you guys from the brand Seiko. A little about them. They were founded back in 1881. They're Japanese in origin and have factories throughout Asia. They cover all market segments from entry level to high end, and this is an example of that high end division, Grand Seiko, which was originally founded in 1960. Now, in terms of type of watch, I consider this an everyday dress watch. Some key characteristics and design, which you're looking for something you can wear every day, but still dresses up quite nicely. Of course, you're going to want something that's clean, classic, with a minimalist design, and something that is also sensibly sized. This is the Grand Seiko SBGY009, and it is their 44GS 55th anniversary 1500 piece limited edition. Now, 2022 marked the 55th anniversary of the 44GS case, which introduced back in 1967, would pretty much set the bar for their unique design language that would guide the brand's timepieces for decades and decades to come, featuring a dial inspired by the moment when the full moon is at its highest point in the sky. You could have gotten these brand new for $8,100 from the brand, but you can get this particular unit for $6,850 pre-owned from Belmont Watches in San Diego. So big shout out to Belmont for lending this gorgeous timepiece into the channel so I can share it with you guys. This has a 40 millimeter diameter, is only 10.8 millimeters thick, and has a 46 millimeter lug to lug stainless steel dual curved sapphire with an inner AR coating, and man, is this thing gorgeous. The main thing to be excited about though in this case, guys, is that this features a manual spring drive caliber, the 9R31. So everything you love about spring drive, but minus that rotor. And also you're going to see that the signature power reserve indicator has been moved to the back onto the movement, which is awesome. So with that said, let's go ahead, zoom the camera out, get this piece in hand, and take a closer look. Okay guys, another big shout out to Belmont Watches, but let's take in this dial. Let's get a little angle on it so you guys can see all of the beautiful, let's dust it off best we can, but let's take a look at the dial there, guys. That is so much more than just a sunray effect there. You guys can see very nice deep. Oh my gosh, look at that. It's so clean, it's so simple, but for some reason it just looks great. And yeah, it's more of just a very linear stratiation there, and not as intense as some of their more organic texturing. But I have to say, this texture is very cool, especially with the thick level of lacquer that is on top of it, keeping that deep glossy blue really on display. If we can get it to focus here, come on, there you go. Ooh, check it out. All right, so we already went over the dimensions earlier, guys, but I know some of you are probably thinking 40 millimeters, that seems kind of big for a watch like this. But look at its case shape. Its dimensions are more than just the ultimate dimensions, but look at the proportions itself. Smaller dial, big wide shoulders, wider bezel. It's going to really effectively shrink this watch, especially when you see, look at that side case profile, the Zaratsu on top and on bottom, with a very masterfully thin strip of that brushed satinization just dancing in between those two polished planes. Guys, this is going to appear much smaller and wear much smaller on the wrist, and that's why there are so many 40 millimeter 44GS watches. I think they only recently finally came out with a smaller variants. I think in the 36.5 range. I feel like for me maybe 38.5 would be perfect, but I have to say, if I had to choose between one of the smaller ones or this one being at 40 would be my choice, just because it's going to wear smaller visually, and I don't want it to wear too small. And I feel like those 36.5 or 36 millimeter variations, for at least for my 7.5 inch wrist, can feel quite a bit big, or I should say small and petite and just undersized, and maybe a little bit too much of a dedicated dress watch to where I wouldn't feel comfortable wearing it outside of a long sleeve shirt. Now, This watch, though, at 40 millimeters was going to look great underneath the cuff, but also is going to look fine with something that's going to be a little bit more casual. If you're going to go short sleeves, that 40 millimeter diameter is going to play much nicer. So that's one thing to mention. Now, the crown is a push-pull crown, beautifully signed and engraved there, as you guys can see. And this movement is the gem and the jewel of the show. Check that out. Yes, look at that. Power reserve on the back, just where the folks wish that it was. And I think that's fine, especially because you're going to be taking this off of your wrist to wind it, and then you're going to be able to look. And I have to say, it's going to take a lot of winds because this thing has a 3-day, 72-hour power reserve, which is fantastic, right? So this is their manual spring drive caliber 9R31. You're going to get plus or minus 1 second per day or 15 seconds per month accuracy, right? So that's a pretty nice little tight tolerance. You can see even the ghosted little lion logo there on that sapphire display back. 3-day power reserve, which is fantastic, and the fact that it's manual wind and that you do have a very useful power reserve indicator that not only is very useful but also looks really great being relocated here, versus a lot of times they were on the dial side. People weren't too crazy about that. I think it's become kind of a signature look, but on the back end it just becomes something so much more extra and useful. And yeah, this particular layout isn't going to be quite to their Creedor level of, their spring drives that they have that are manual, but this thing is still beautifully done. Look at that flat brush, perfect. Oh my. And then of course all of those beautiful jewels there working away there. So very, very cool. And you're still getting 10 bar or 100 meters of water resistance, which is great, right? Getting back to this side, guys, very simple. You got this textured blue dial, no date to complicate anything. And man, is it gorgeous. Those signature Dauphine hands, everything is polished and faceted to an extremely high level. And you're going to even have that nice gilt seconds hand. So you're going to get the corporate blue with that nice regal gold there, looking really, really fantastic, which is going to blend really well with, if you're wearing browns, khakis, earth tones, it's going to go really great. And then of course the blue is going to go great with blue. But honestly, if you're the right type of guy, you could even wear this with a white t-shirt and blue jeans, and this is going to look great even on the blue crocodile strap, guys. Which, let's talk about it. 19 millimeters, very nice. You can see insanely beautiful when it comes to this deployant class, beautifully milled, amazingly and expertly chamfered and beveled. This thing is nice. But with that said, let's actually get it on the wrist and see how it wears. Okay, guys, as you can see on my 7.5 inch wrist, this looks fantastic, guys. Holy smokes! Look at how thin that wears, how it lays, how it contours. That is gorgeous. I mean, the 44GS case is absolutely legendary, and for good reason. But if I do get my wrist a bit too close to the camera lens, you're going to notice a bit of perspective distortion. It's going to seem a lot larger than it actually is. Check this out. If I lay my wrist nice and flat, though, and then just tighten up the frame, you're going to notice that it sits beautifully centered on the wrist, and you're going to get a bit of a truer aspect ratio as you're taking this more detailed look. Man, look at that. That's even a little tighter. Whew. Look at that. And that doesn't seem oversized, not one bit, guys. That just is hitting an absolute sweet spot. That is gorgeous. Look at those bevels, those Aratsu. This thing is just a joy on the wrist. Look at that slim sliver of satinization sandwiched between two different Zaratsu polishing, one reflecting off of a little reflective board I have off camera and the other reflecting off of my skin. Look at that. The reflecting off of my skin is beautifully distortion free. That's insane. So this is a very handsome piece. It wears very, very well, guys. Do not be detoured by the 40 millimeter size. I will say that's probably one of the reasons why they keep making these watches in 40 millimeters. It's because they're really great at 40 millimeters. As much as I want to try to over complicate everything and say, look, for a dress watch, I like to keep it closer to 38 and a half. This thing is just, I wouldn't be like, oh, I'm going to pass up on this, because it's not, you know, it's a $6,000 watch, which is going to make me, you know, be very, very particular about it. You know, and that's after a good deal, right? $6,850 pre-owned from Belmont Watches. Big shout out to them again. But yeah, ooh, it's not overly sized at all. It's just, I think it's just right. They just do such a good job with the proportions of that dial. You guys can see even with my larger wrist, you're still going to have a little bit of that forward tongue. And some of you are wondering, well, why do they do it that way? Isn't that backwards? No, it's just because this is going to mirror the way that a clasp opens on a bracelet, right? It opens this side, open towards the 6 o'clock. That's what they do. This is more of a, you know, mechanical type of clasp. So that's the way they're going to open it. It's more intuitive this way. You know, it's not a pin buckle, which you would have the other way, and that would be more intuitive the other way. So with that said, let's actually get it off the wrist, set up for some low light transition, because there is no lume here. Okay, let's go ahead and hit the lights here. Of course, there's no lume, but I like to keep a little bit of secondary light out, because you're not always going to be out in the middle of a field enjoying direct sunlight. A lot of times you're going to find yourself coming in and out of buildings, walking underneath overhangs, or just hanging out underneath the shade of a tree. So as I see with these colors, textures, and finishes render alike in less than optimal lighting. And my goodness, guys, this is still very, very legible. Check that out. Look at the glow off of that dial furniture, just beautifully reflecting back. And then, of course, that deep, inky blue, even with that little texturing, man, it just looks fantastic. And again, this is more of a everyday dress watch, guys. I say every day because it does have 100 meters of water resistance. It also is quite robust in its build quality. But of course, at the end of the day, this thing is just really a smoke show, and, you know, probably should be worn on more special occasions. But my goodness, how can you not want to show this thing off and get it out in the sun and out to be appreciated? Look at that. And again, even in less than optimal lighting conditions, check that out. You're still getting a decent amount of visibility thanks to the level of reflection that you're getting off of all of these beautiful finishes, guys. Oh my. Of course, if I get into some harsher lighting situations, you could probably expose just a little bit more of the wear. You guys can see the little micro spots here and there. But the most one beauties about buying this used, right, being pre-owned versus brand new, you don't have to worry about those first little here and there things that don't really matter, that you're only going to notice under 4K enhancement, under specific lighting. But when it's on your wrist, you're not going to notice any of that. You're going to just enjoy the watch for what it is. So, guys, on the wrist, this wears more like a 39 due to that signature case and dial proportion layout. In terms of model variants, this was also available in an SBGY011, which had a frost linen dial representing daybreak versus this 009 representing kind of the more evening side of the theme, a bit of yin and yang there, very cool. In terms of comparable models, manual wind spring drive, you know, they're really in kind of a category of their own. But I personally, guys, this is just my personal opinion, don't have any issues saying these movements, you know, more than hold their own against more traditional and ornately decorated movements from, you know, from well-established brands, whether they be Swiss or German, often costing a lot more, right? If you're going to really get into that, you can get some, oh, look at that, just a little reflection of me there. Check that out. That's how good this thing is. Wow. This is just a good looking watch, guys. 44GS case is fantastic. Bottom line, for many of you, this piece kind of probably just won you over at the fact that it has a manual wind spring drive with the power reserve indicator on the back. I mean, that's kind of how I felt. If I hear that spec, I want to see what that watch looks like, and they didn't disappoint. You know, and rightfully so. It's just a very cool piece. So this configuration is awesome, you know, regardless of what the watch even looks like. And then you kind of add to that this beautifully thin, iconic 44GS case silhouette with a textured, deep corporate blue dial. And yeah, you have yourself an absolute classic. This thing is going to age like a fine wine. So a big shout out again to Belmont Watches in San Diego. If you like the video, please do a like. And if you haven't already, please subscribe for more content just like this. Thanks, guys.